Welcome to Her Love of Sports with your host, Katie Hamilton.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Her Love of Sports, where we're highlighting professional women in the sports industry. I am so excited for my guest today. She is my friend and one of my coworkers at the BC Lions, Mackenzie Rolland. She is a coach, a super sports player, and I'm so excited to have you, Mackenzie. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I know. I'm so glad that we were able to do it. So a little backstory. So Mackenzie and I met about a year ago when we both started working for the BC Lions. And I was so excited instantly when you were talking about your role in sports and where you played and where you coached and then just working for the Lions. So I'm so excited to kind of like dive into your story and just kind of hear about your whole career.
Yeah, I'm super excited too. Sports is like such a big part of who I am, and it really kind of shaped me into who I am today.
Yeah, so let's start into it. So your main sport is lacrosse, right?
Yes, lacrosse was my sport for sure. However, like looking back, when I was like 4 years old, you never would have guessed it.
How did you get into sports?
I have two brothers. I'm like a middle child, and right away my parents were all about sports. Super fortunate to have like parents who supported me through that. You know, I played soccer with my best friend. I played like hockey. I skated. I played field hockey. I literally did everything. Horseback rode, swam, you know what I mean? And then the opportunity to kind of join I believe it's my brother's lacrosse team, kind of presented itself, and like it was a no-brainer, right? I could run around with my brother. I could run around with the boys, you know what I mean? And that's kind of where lacrosse started for me.
I love it. And that's why I think it's so interesting too, because at least like here on the island, like I didn't have any friends that played lacrosse, and I didn't really have any opportunities to play lacrosse. When my younger cousin, who's 10 years younger, she was big in lacrosse in the States. So when I heard that you said that you were lacrosse, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to know how you get into it, like what it's like for girls playing lacrosse. And yeah, so you started lacrosse. How long were you on your brother's team for? Did you then transition? Is there a women's league or a women's group?
So it's so funny that you asked that. Like when I was growing up, kind of like when we were like, 4 or 5 years old sort of thing, girls lacrosse wasn't a thing. I played boys lacrosse until I was honestly like 13 or 14. Like I ran around with the boys. I played on like a box lacrosse team, which for people who don't know what box lacrosse is, it is literally full contact. It is 5-on-5 in a hockey rink that has no ice, and it is like a brutal sport. It's so fun. It's so fast paced, but it's definitely not like what girls play, anywhere else in the world. And I was like, I wasn't the only one who did that. All of my friends here did that. We all played boys, you know what I mean? And then by the time we were about like 14 or 15, they finally started a girls league, and that's kind of when I transitioned into girls lacrosse. But for the most part, I just played boys. It was easier, and it was local, and it was super fun. And then like it got to a point where like I was bouncing off the guys that I was hitting, right? Like I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't doing any justice for the team. I was so small compared to them.
That's what's so wild too, is playing with boys up to that age group, because then you go through like boys, like we all do, we start to get like bigger and stronger, but then you kind of see like the guys start to bulk up, right? So playing against guys that are bigger than you, what was it like also to play on a boys team? Were they super like encouraging? Were they super welcoming having you on the team?
I think because I started so young, and I was playing with like boys when I was like 6 and 7. You know what I mean? It was just normal. But I like distinctly remember I must have been in like fourth or fifth grade when all of a sudden like I got my own locker room. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't in their locker room. On the floor, it was pretty common for like other teams to kind of like single out if there was a girl on the team. So I always hid my hair in my helmet kind of thing. And like the team had my back. I still remember like the whole bench jumping one time when I was like nailed into the boards, right? And my dad and my older brother coached me too. So it was definitely like super welcoming, a great environment for me. I can't speak for like all girls who have played in boys leagues, but I definitely had a great experience. It just kind of got to the point where like I physically like couldn't keep up. You know what I mean? There wasn't any opportunity for me to keep playing boys.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And so then you transitioned to the girls league. So how did that kind of work? Was it, how many teams did you have? How many players did it kind of pick up? And also did you play both field and you said box lacrosse as well? So was it when you transitioned to female, was it box or was it field or both?
So like right away, it was just box. It was box lacrosse, and there was New West, there was Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, Richmond, and then like sometimes South Surrey would have a team. Um, Ridge Meadows might have a team, but for the most part, it was box lacrosse, and it was in the spring. And if you didn't have a team in your town, you were released to another team. And so I did that for a few years, and I want to say when I was 16, that's when field lacrosse kind of came into my life. And it's actually like a super crazy story. We were all playing box lacrosse, and we had this coach, and he came and he was like, I will take your daughters down to a tournament in the States. Like, let me train them, let them get like the hang of playing with a field lacrosse stick, and I'm going to take them down to this tournament, and I promise you your daughters are going to commit to like NCAA schools. And it was just
Wow.
like, I mean, this was like unheard of, right? Like our parents were like, what do you mean? Like, no way, kind of thing. And sure enough, like we went down, and I think there were 12 of us, and we were 16 years old, and we were the only girls at this tournament who weren't wearing like the committed wristbands. And we ended up winning this tournament. And every single one of us
Wow.
committed to a school like after that tournament. And we just had no idea of the lacrosse world and the like college sport world until that point. And that's kind of when field lacrosse came into my life, was that tournament.
Wow, that's amazing. And you guys must have been like great because if you're going to the States, which is like competitive, so much more competitive in a sense, and they all have their committed wristbands. So and to win it, like congratulations. I love that
Yeah,
story.
it was pretty crazy. And like we won this game in overtime. And I still remember like our best player on the team could not shoot forehand. It's a different stick, right? It's not the same
Hmm.
as a box lacrosse stick. You don't have that deep like mesh pocket. Like what you have
Hmm.
is what we had was like leather strings, and the ball like a tennis racket, the ball was above the sidebar. And we had this girl who like physically could not shoot forehand. Best player on our team, fastest girl, like honestly fastest girl in the US. And she caught the ball and she scored backhand, and we won the game that way. And it was just like
Wow.
insane. We had all these college coaches watching us, and like she committed to Northwestern, which was amazing. And she was a little younger than us, but she was kind of the first one, and then it kind of just from there, it was like the domino effect.
That's crazy. And where was the tournament held out of?
It was in Palm Springs in California on the polo fields,
Oh.
like the horse fields.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, it's a really fun tournament. It's in January every year. The team that I coach, like now, they still go to that tournament. It's a big college recruiting tournament, and it's one of the bigger ones on the West Coast because lacrosse isn't so big over here.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah,
Wow, that's amazing. That's so cool too that that's kind of like where your journey kind of took off and now you're coaching girls at that tournament. That's pretty cool. And then
yeah, it was
so then
great.
you got picked up for college. So what college did you go to and how was that experience like for you?
So I started out. I was recruited to play at a small school in North Carolina. I always say North Carolina, and people are like UNC. I'm like, no. A small Division II school called Pfeiffer University in North Carolina, and I went with three of my teammates from here. They all grew up in Ladner, so it was nice to kind of go with friends. And we went in, and I played there for 2 years. Our freshman year, we had an NCAA tournament berth. We were ranked fifth in the nation. You know what I mean? We were a super strong team, and our coach left. I got there, and like a month into being there, our coach like left. And so I played my freshman and my sophomore year there, and then I made the decision to transfer. So I spent 2 years at my first school, and then I transferred to a small Division I school in New York City called LA
Oh, wow.
Brooklyn. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. What kind of advice would you give to girls that are going, especially like, going from like Ladner and BC to going all the way over to North Carolina and what advice would you give to girls that are kind of looking to go to a different school or they might be nervous about going to another country to play sports and follow their passion?
Honestly, like the best advice I can give is just to kind of like trust the process. For me, like my first school wasn't a great fit. And a part of that had to do with like the coach leaving, or I just didn't necessarily click for me. And I transferred, and I was the happiest person in the world. It was the best decision I ever made. But all I can say is just trust the process. Go to college recruitment camps when you can. You know what I mean? Still play all like don't quit every other sport for a sport that you think you want to go to college for. Like, continue to play the sports that you love, make the friends that you make, and like that'll only make you a better, like, not only like person but athlete. You know what I mean? That's going to make you more appealing to these college coaches, and just, keep playing sports, right?
No, that's perfect. And also, because you were a multi-sport athlete, and usually when we have guests on, lots of them are multi-sport athletes. And do you think that really benefited with lacrosse as well, playing all those sports growing up, and then once you transition, it's kind of a balance of all different techniques and skills?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, I could look at any college team and I could tell you like who played just lacrosse growing up and who played like multiple sports, right? It's the difference between being like a lacrosse athlete, like being good at lacrosse, and being an overall like round athlete, right? And that makes you more appealing, right? Like, the coaches that are recruiting, like if coaches are looking at you, they're looking at you when you're in like ninth, 10th grade. They're looking to see kind of what potential you have, right? They can teach you like what you need to know for lacrosse once you get there, but they're like looking at your athleticism. You know what I mean? They're looking at you as a whole,
Yeah.
not just like sports specific.
Right, right. No, that's great advice too, right? And I think sometimes, at least when I'm coaching, is we have lots of multi-sport in soccer. Of course, they play their other volleyball or baseball or basketball, whatever they play. And I know I really love them to continue it. So if you're missing a practice or something, I just find that it's so beneficial, especially at a young age, because sometimes you don't know which sport you want to pursue too, right? If it's like, okay, I have this sport and I don't know which one I want to go through, that it's like just keep doing both and it will kind of find you, I feel like. And yeah, at the end of the day, it
A
all kind of
hundred
benefits.
percent. A hundred
Yeah.
percent. If like you had told me or my parents, honestly, like if I was gonna go and play Division 1 lacrosse in the US, you told them that at like any point in my childhood, even when I was like 15, they would have been like, yeah, right. I would have been like, no way. I love soccer. You know what I mean? Like, I just play lacrosse in the off season kind of thing. It like it wasn't my first sport and it wasn't my first passion. You know what I mean? But it became my passion, and it became like, like a door for me to kind of like, it opened so many doors for me. It really just made me like the person I am, and I can't like thank like all the sports that I did enough, because they kind of directed me to lacrosse. You know what I mean? I tried
Yeah.
everyone out and then I found the one that fit.
The one that fit. I wish that lacrosse, when I was growing up, at least female lacrosse, was more at the forefront and more an option for girls to play, because I've seen, of course, men play and box lacrosse. And like you said at the beginning, like it's a super physical game and there's so much talent. And it's like, I just can't even grasp my head around it. Like, just all the different techniques that you have to do with holding the stick, with throwing it, with the current like running and switching, and then the physicality. So I really wish, like when I was younger, there was more people like yourself to kind of look up to, or like see the routes that you took. And then that kind of transitions into your coaching aspect, and which I loved. And I think we connected on that kind of right away, is just that we're both coaches in a male dominant sport, and yeah, helping young girls follow their dreams. So let's talk a little bit about that, about how your coaching career started.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, like I just moved home from New York this past year, and I was fortunate enough after I graduated to be like a volunteer assistant on the women's lacrosse team at the university I played for. And so I kind of got a little bit of experience, but I don't feel like I really dove into it and like, really got into it until I moved home. I was actually at a Lions game or a Lions event. I was helping run a viewing party at our practice facility in like Surrey, BC. And I'm, running around, like, I think I was popping popcorn, honestly, for this like away game. And our season ticket holders were coming to watch. And I walked by this one lady who was wearing she was wearing the most decked out like Lions gear I had ever seen, and like it definitely like was a home job. You know what I mean? She had these like cool leggings on, but she was limping. And I was like, oh, did you just have knee surgery, kind of thing, like chatting with some of the season ticket holders. And she was like, I know you. And she like grabbed my accreditation, like my name tag or whatever. And she goes,
Mhm.
Mackenzie Rolland. She goes, Kim Davies. And she was the lady who actually, like, when I was a child, their family like released me to different teams when I needed to like play on a team and there wasn't a team in Surrey. They would release me to like New West or Richmond or whatever. So they were heavily involved in the lacrosse world. And right away they were like,
No
you're
way.
home? Do you want to coach? Like, and I at the time I kind of thought they were joking, and I was like, I mean, yeah, sure. Like, here's my number. Like, give me a call anytime. And then fast forward to like a week later, I went to go say hi to them at their like seats on like sideline field seating, and they're like, "We're really gonna call you. Like, we need coaches. We want you to coach." And I was like, "Okay." And like the next day, the commissioner called me, and it was just like a done deal. I was the head coach of the U15 girls from Surrey, and it was field lacrosse. And I was super excited. I brought on one of my friends as the assistant, and it was the first time that these girls had ever had a girl coach, somebody who wasn't a dad. And like that's huge in lacrosse because like you can have a dad, who's played lacrosse, you know what I mean? Who like grew up playing lacrosse kind of thing if you're on a boys team, but it's a different sport in women's lacrosse. It is 100% a different sport. It's a different stick, different rules, you know what I mean? Like we don't even wear helmets in field lacrosse. We wear goggles, right? It's just a whole different game. So for them to have like young females who had played at the collegiate level was huge. And the girls like right away were super excited about it. And it's a tricky age, don't get me wrong. It's like 12 to 15-year-old girls, right? So there was a little bit of sass and a little bit of attitude. But that's really kind of what got me into it. And then from there, like I was able to kind of build on that, and I was invited to be on the like Fusion West coaching staff, which is a travel program. So it's basically like it's you try out for this travel team, and you have the opportunity, if you make this team, to go to tournaments in the US. And the benefits of being on one of these teams is that like the coaching staff is stacked with like ex-college players, right? We've got girls from Northwestern, girls from like UCLA, that kind of thing. And it's just like all girls who have gone through this, who are there to kind of like help in facilitate like the same environment and kind of help these girls kind of, if they want to go on and play lacrosse post high school, it kind of gives them the means to do so, right?
I love how like the coaching started at a BC Lions event, because I can just picture it, because Lions have the best fans, so I can just picture in my head this woman walking up to you in her Lions decked out gear. It's just a great story, and now that's where you work, and now you're getting into and you're doing your coaching, and like you said, it is like those kind of ages I find too, like 12 to 15, 16 they're delicate ages, because there's so much development just in life that goes on, not to mention in sports. And so to have a female coach is so important, and someone who's kind of, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but someone who's a little bit younger, so you can relate to it, right? You're just coming off your university, so you know what to expect, you know what's going on, you know how to get to where you want to be. So I'm sure for the girls, it's like so inspiring to have you and have your assistant coach.
Yeah,
Your head
I
coach
mean,
too.
I think like just like building on that, like, I mean, we constantly were, I think like we said it almost too much, but I like am jealous of what they have. Like if I had the opportunity, like when I was that age, I wasn't even playing, I didn't even know what field lacrosse was at that age, but just to have someone who had, gone to school in the States, been through the recruiting process, you know, done the SATs, that sort of thing, somebody like that as like someone I could look up to, like a role model, like a coach, you know what I mean? It's like they wouldn't even necessarily have to be the best at coaching, but just to have that resource that like we don't often see here in Canada, like that they, like it's not a level playing field, you know what I mean? If you're getting recruited from Canada compared to getting recruited down in the States. So it just, for me, it like feels like something that's important to kind of do is give back to the roots of lacrosse and just help kind of continue to like break those glass ceilings and like help girls succeed in like honestly like in more ways than we could, just because they have the resources now.
Totally. I completely agree. And like you said, like it's so much more too when you're getting scouted or wanting to go to college, especially in the States. Like it's not just you're playing or how many goals you score or how good you are. It's like there's the SATs, it's tests, it's living there probably. It's the amount of your scholarship and is it feasible to go down there. So having that and like you said, having you as a resource that's been through it and can kind of say, this is my experience, this is areas that worked for me, this is areas I'd rather redo, that kind of thing, I think is so valuable in having someone like yourself as a coach for young girls. So I love that. I love it. What would you say would be one of your highlights back in your college careers? Do you have a highlight that happened, or some, even just a moment that you're like, it could be like your first game or just something that you're like, wow, this is something that I will always remember?
Honestly, I do, and it's not even lacrosse. It so When I transferred schools, I moved to New York City. I had a few friends on the team. Like, ironically, I also had four teammates that were from here on that team. So it was people I knew. And when you transfer, like, typically transfer students end up hanging out with freshmen. They're like incoming class sort of thing. But for me, like, I meshed with the team right away, and I was, friends with girls who were in my year sort of thing. And I came into this school knowing that I had qualified for like the New York City Marathon. And so I came in and I right away I like said to the coach, I said to Nuzzy, our head coach, hey, are you cool if I like run the New York City Marathon? It's not during season. It's during fall ball, but like, we're not playing games, we're just playing tournaments. And she was like, yeah, as long as it doesn't interfere with our practice schedule, like, you know what I mean? It doesn't take, you don't run, less fast at practice kind of thing. It doesn't take away from anything that you're doing with us. Go for it. So I trained for the New York City Marathon my junior year in the fall, and it was a Saturday. It was a Halloween weekend. It was Saturday. We played 4 games. I literally played every minute of like these 4 games. Halloween night. So we go out kind of thing, with all our friends in the athletic department. And this is kind of like where I knew I was at home. Is the next day I woke up, I took the ferry to Staten Island. I'm getting ready to run this marathon, hoping that maybe like a few of my teammates like pop out sort of thing, because we run right by our campus. So I get all like, I take off all my layers and you donate them or whatever, and I get going. And the entire athletic department is like outside, with signs cheering me on and just following my pace. Like they're like broadcasting it on our athletic department's like website, like how I'm doing in this marathon, which my first half was very fast. My second half was not. But I ran right by campus, and to have everyone out there cheering me on and just kind of like screaming my name meant the world to me. And that, like, in that moment, that's kind of when I knew that New York was home and that I was going to love it, like, at LIU, and that this is kind of where the start of like a new life was for me. These are going to be the kids who are going to be in my wedding sort of thing. And that was by far like the best experience I ever had in college, is just to know that like everyone had my back and was there for me. And it like has nothing to do with lacrosse.
I love that. I love that so much. It just makes me so happy inside, which sounds silly, but like that's such a great memory too. And that's what I love about sports, is like when you find your family or like your team that just fits and feels right. And you, like you said, like, you're home, and these people are going to be in your life forever. It's something that's so special that you can't really compare it to. Um, I love it. And we'll get one of your, some of your friends or something on, and you can co-host with me another episode, and we can interview them and hear
That'd
about
be
all your
awesome.
stories. Yeah. So you were running. So running is a crazy one. Would that be one of your strengths, or?
Yeah. So like, honestly, like I think about this all the time. I definitely wasn't the most skilled at lacrosse. My coach called me unorthodox, honestly. Like I played like that, and I wasn't the most coordinated, but something that I always like knew I could control was my like work ethic, and I always tried to work hard. You know what I mean? Like I always tried to kind of leave it all out on the field. But what really kind of brought that to the next level was when, I realized that like running was something that I was the best at on my team. And like at the end of the day, no matter what, Monday mornings, we're running sprints at practice. Like I knew that like I was going to make my time and that I was going to be at the front of the pack. And like for that kind of really drove my confidence, and it helped me like find my like niche with the team. You know what I mean? No matter how hard practice was or like how tough a game was sort of thing, I knew that like at the end of the day, like I was going to be the last one running, and I was going to be the one who could outrun everyone else. And that for me really just, I found my strength, and I kind of like, I use that to my advantage, because everyone, like you said, everyone has their own set, like skill set. And, some girls are really good at scoring goals. Like I was a defender, so I didn't score a lot of goals, but I was really good at knockdowns and running. And that's kind of what worked for me.
I love it. That's great. That's great to know. Okay, and then let's transition. So you came back from New York, you came back home to Ladner and Vancouver, BC area. How did you get started with the Lions? How did we become coworkers?
So I moved home, and I hadn't been home in 3 years. I hadn't seen my family in 3 years. That, you know, it was like I'd spent 5 Christmases away from home. I moved home like on a whim. My younger brother and his fiance, and then my mom, they came to New York and they helped me move home. And I didn't really have a plan. I thought that I wanted to take off until the fall. I hadn't taken a day off or even like a weekend off in years. I was a live-in nanny, so I was very busy with work and very like involved in like the kids' lives. And so I needed a mental break. And I really didn't think I was going to work until like September. And this was March, April kind of thing. And I'd been home for maybe a month. And I was like, wow, I'm really bored. And so my dad was like, the Lions are usually hiring around this time. Like, why don't you look on Indeed? And I was like, I don't know if I want to work in sports, Dad. Like, I've been around sports so much. Like, I think I might just need a break from sports. And sure enough, like the Lions posted, like they posted the job that I have. And I actually applied like a week late. And I was super lucky. They were in the process of hiring someone, and I don't think it necessarily worked out, and they were able to pivot, and they ended up hiring me. So I came on the first week of our like first game. So I kind of got thrown right into it, and I loved it. I loved the rush of it. For everyone like watching and listening, I'm the game operations coordinator. So I help out with like stadium and game operations, and then I like specifically I run our like tailgate before the game. So it's super fun, it's super fast paced, and I kind of like got thrown into it without being prepared or like trained or, you know, kind of having that experience, but it worked out.
That's so funny because I remember when we first met, because I started too, and we started about the same time. And when I first met you, you were so confident in your role that I was like, oh, she's been here for years. Like, I thought, like, yeah. And you're like, no, I just started. And I was like, no, I just started. I was like, you literally have this like nailed down. And like you said, like the pregame parties are so much fun. They're so organized, and they're like one of my favorite parts is just the pregame parties. But for me, like I was so nervous coming because I think working in the sports industry, it's tough to find females, and also there's sometimes it's sometimes hard to connect with them. So I was nervous coming in. It was like big BC Lions, and when I met you, you were just so fun and bubbly and so sweet. And I think I like when we did a run a show or something, you were throwing the ball, and I was like, she's so athletic too. And then we started talking and hearing about your career. But I'm like was so happy to be able to work with you and like see the work that you do, and it's definitely such a fun atmosphere for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the feelings were likewise. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm throwing this big party, and all of a sudden I like needed an MC, and I was like, I can't do it. Like, I don't know how to talk in front of people, and I was honestly probably more stressed out than you were at that point. And then I think Sarah or one of our other like female colleagues was like, you have Katie, and I was like, well, who's Katie? And then I met you, and I was like, oh my gosh, this girl is amazing. And then like right there from the get-go, I feel like we hit it off, and we were like two peas in a pod. And it was always so nice to have you out there like pregame kind of thing, because when you're not there and I have to host, it's the worst. But it's also just
You're
nice
so
to see
good
a
at it
friendly
though.
face.
Like I watched you once when I was like leaving, and I was like, she's great. She's got this.
I'm like up there like sweating. I'm like, I can't do this. I don't know how you do it all the time.
I find it harder, honestly, in the pregame, like our pregame party, when you can see the eyes looking at you, and it's like super packed, especially when we have like the big stadium on Robson Street. It's when you see the eyes, it's more nerve wracking than when you're in stadium and you don't see the eyes. You're just on screen and you're just looking at the camera. It's so much less like nerve wracking for some reason. So I totally get that, because like my first time when it was like just meeting you guys, and I was like, I just want to be a part of the team, and you were so welcoming and stuff. But it was nerve wracking, but it was so good, and I just love seeing you walk around and just have the answers to everything. And I'm like, I don't want to bother you because I'm like, she has so much going on. But no, yeah, it's so much fun doing what we do.
It is. It really is so fun. And it's so great to kind of just have that network of like, even like, doesn't have to be females, but just having that close network of like friends who are also coworkers who know sports. Like, we're all passionate about sports, and it's not necessarily like an industry where like females are always passionate about sports. So it's just super nice to have that like close circle of us where we all like to have fun and we all like our jobs and we all work hard sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a good atmosphere and a good working environment. Yeah. So let's do a couple Q&As before we wrap it up. Do you have any athletes, male or female, any athletes that you kind of looked up to or when you were growing up?
Honestly, like people ask me that all the time and I don't think I did. You know what I mean? Like we were like not big like TV kids growing up. Like we didn't watch a lot of TV. We didn't like we spent our summers like at a lake without like internet, you know what I mean? Like the power was out half the time sort of thing. So I feel like I wasn't like almost exposed to it. Like yeah, like as a soccer girl, like I looked up to Mia Hamm kind of thing. But like the most exposure I had to sports was watching hockey with my dad. So like maybe like I might have looked up to like Marcus Naslin, you know what I mean? I wore number 19 in hockey, but for me like there wasn't really a standout female or anyone like in the sport who I looked up to.
Yeah, no, that's fair for sure. What are your goals? Like, where do you see you going? Like, are you going to continue with coaching? Are you going to get back into playing? Like, what's kind of your goals or where you're trying to go off to?
So actually I do play right now. I play in a box lacrosse league, not a field lacrosse league. And it is like NLL rules, so it's full contact. It's all females. We had drafts, you know what I mean? It was super fun.
Amazing.
But I think like goal wise for me, I love working in sports. It's something like you know we kind of talked about this whole time that like I'm super passionate about. But I just think like the next generation of females, like for them, like I think that like we've paved the way a little bit for them, but I think there's like so much more that can be done, and that's something that like for me, like that's a goal for me to be a part of, right? And like just not necessarily like breaking glass ceilings, but you know what I mean, giving like kids the resources or young girls the resources that like we didn't necessarily have to kind of get to like where they want to go. And I do think like it's important that females are represented in sports. So I do see myself like working in sports and events long term. And I don't foresee myself like stopping coaching. I love it too much. And it's how I network with my friends because we're all back from college and, you know, like that's how we see each other is coaching together, coaching against each other. So yeah, definitely my goal is to continue to kind of work in sports and grow like as a person and, you know, continue to educate myself and like the community on like what girls can kind of do in sports and like what we can do to get them there.
I love it. I think that's a perfect way to kind of wrap up this episode. It was so amazing. I'm so glad we finally got to do this and hear about your whole career and story. And thank you so much, Mackenzie, for coming on Her Love of Sports.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun.
To catch all the latest, make sure to follow us on social at Her Love of Sports and check out herloveofsports.com.